how we all respond differently to situations. For example, I get couples coming and talking to me and they say, oh, well, she says he won't talk. So when I start exploring a bit more with them, I find out what's going on, and it's very interesting. So when I talk to her and I say, well, how have you approached, give me an example of what's happening. So she'll say, well, I try and talk to him because I try to talk to my partner and look at and tell him that I'm really not very happy. I feel that there's something not going right with us, that you don't talk to me, but you won't talk about it, you won't sort it out, you just say everything's okay. So when I ask him, what is it about you? What's going on for you? And once he opens up a bit, because often men find it a little bit more difficult to open up at times, I think. He might say, well, I feel that she keeps getting at me. And the more she goes on and nags at me, the more I don't want to talk about it. That's interesting, isn't it? Because we all process things differently. We see the world very differently. We're all individuals. And when I kind of explore it, I find that often, I don't want to generalise because that wouldn't be right, but I don't want to say everybody's like it, but I would say generally women do want to talk things out. They're much more talkative, they're able to talk to their friends, so therefore they're wanting more to talk to their partner about what's going on. So talk to me, tell me what's wrong. No, you haven't answered me, you haven't sorted this out. And so they keep on. Been there. And his response is that the more he feels that she's going on at him, the more he withdraws. So he feels he can't respond. Maybe he needs more time. I think sometimes men need to process things a bit more. And he can't respond, and if he does, he might feel he's going to say the wrong thing. So he withdraws into his man cave. But the more he retreats into his man cave, the more his wife or partner feels that she's being ignored and not listened to and brushed aside. And the more she feels that she's not being heard, the more she gets on at him, and the more that she gets on at him, the more he withdraws into his man cave. You can see where this is going, can't you? Stalemate. So he shuts down, feeling that he can't respond, he can't say the right thing, and he hasn't got time to think it through. And she feels he's ignoring her. Anybody recognise this one? It's very common. So it is a case of understanding each other and what it is that we need from each other. What we need, what is it that, what will make a difference? And I think there are lots of things about communication that can create different problems. So I think it's rewording it or finding out ways of talking to each other in a different way, rather than what's up with you, which will actually make me might feel a bit kind of, really? I'm not going to respond to that one. Hairs on the back of the neck standing up. more about, you know, there's something going on here and I wonder, are you okay? You know, asking them if they're okay rather than just bitching about the fact that you're not okay. But noticing about your partner, how maybe they need more time, they need more time to process stuff, more time to think things through. We sometimes think or believe that men are hard nuts, they're tough, they can cope, they don't need that kind of gentleness that we women generally feel we need. But actually, you know, the guys that I've worked with, they're real softies underneath, but society makes them tough. Little boys fall over, they're told to get up, be a man, grow up, you know, don't be silly, you don't make a fuss, whereas girls are cuddled if they fall over, for example. So they're not allowed to show their feelings very readily because they're supposed to be the tough guy. They're the protectors, they're the hunter-gatherers, they're the ones that are supposed to be there for us and protect us. All right, the world's changing, but there's still an element of that, isn't it? So they find it harder to actually say anything. They find it harder to wear their heart on their sleeve. They've not been brought up that way, probably. And the other thing is that we all view the world in very different ways. Well, you think about it. When we grow up in very different kind of family systems. We have our parents are going to be very different from each other generally. We're going to have different backgrounds. We're going to have different families. I was an only child, and my husband was one of 7. That was very different. So his growing up, his family situation was very different from mine, and his parents were different, where they lived, where they worked, how their family traditions, their family rituals were very, very different from my family. So although we thought, yes, we got on very well together and so on, but those family rituals and kind of ways of being are very different. And when we grow up, we learn different things. I think it's quite interesting that one word can mean a very different thing to different people, and that is quite an interesting one. When somebody says they're feeling a particular way, I always question what it means. What does that word mean? What does it mean for you when you tell me you're feeling unhappy? What does unhappy mean for you? And that can vary very much from one family to another, because we only learn generally from our caregivers and our family. So it's what we learn, and therefore we think that the other person understands what we mean by it. Well, they won't, because you're two strangers getting together and you've had very different backgrounds. It's almost like, yeah, almost 2 different species living in the same house together. I know that sounds a bit extreme, but in some ways it is. So when you have those kinds of things and ways of talking and ways of behaving, if you come from a family of 7, like my husband was, then it would have been a very noisy household, fighting to get yourselves heard. Whereas for me, yes, I was an only child, so I didn't have to fight for my place in the family. They were there. So communication would have been very different, and ways of being together would have been very different. So I just wanted to kind of say that one this evening, and just think about that, and just accept that sometimes your man, he might need just that, a little bit of understanding and approaching in a different way. And guys, the same. Women do want to get things off their chest generally. And the other thing I'd say is that we don't always need fixing. When we come home or we start talking to you and saying, oh, this what happened or that's what happened, it doesn't mean that we're looking for a solution. it means that we want to be heard, we want to offload, and maybe we want to cuddle or just that little bit of understanding. Guys really feel that often that they're places that they're supposed to fix things, but you don't. You don't have to fix things. Sometimes ask your partner what it is. What is it you need right now? You're talking and you're telling me things. What is it you want from me? And you might discover something very different. You might discover that you don't have to fix things. You might discover that you don't have to do anything. You might feel that, well, what am I supposed to do? But just check it out. Check it out. That's what I'd say.